I like.
Sounds so Jamin. You know, at the time where there was clearly one best deck, I tried Twiddlestorm because I didn't like winning.
Welcome back to another special video here on Cardmarket. We love rating your stuff. Be it custom created cards, custom created decks, tournament reports. No, we don't even rate those, but we're back rating your budget modern decks. So we made a community post asking for budget modern decks and you responded plenty. Not only modern decks, but also other decks. Maybe we'll cover those in the future. Anyways, if you don't want to miss this type of thing going on where you can send us your stuff and we react to it, we look through them, we improve them, make sure to subscribe because that way you will be shown our community posts on the main page. Also hit the bell because then you'll be notified.
Yes, first deck is from Leaf Iguana. And it's actually very cheap for only 35 euros.
Yeah, we typed all of these deck lists into the shopping wizards on Cardmarket because the shopping wizard is the best way to like automate buying a bunch of cards at once. You just type it all in there, it loads a configuration for you, and then you just double check that it's really good because sometimes computers make mistakes. But yeah, what's the deck about, Toffel?
Yeah, you can get yourself a budget discard mono black deck.
So it's like an 8-rack deck, right?
Yeah, it's a 0-rack deck. There's no racks. But
well, I mean, there is Shrieking Affliction,
yes,
which is the 8 racks, 5 through 8 in the regular 8-rack version.
You switch out some core standards as of Thoughtseize. Obviously very expensive.
So missing Thoughtseize, how much are you really missing out on here? You still have access to Duress, you still have access to stuff like Despise, right? These are all not very expensive. Thoughtseize, of course, is just the discard spell that hits everything. How much less powerful does this get that way?
Yeah, a lot. Having the flexibility to choose anything in any matchup is huge because sometimes, obviously against control decks or even something like Phoenix, you don't want to take a creature.
Yeah.
And sometimes then you want to take a spell, or the other way around against aggro deck, you don't want to take the spell. So having like cards that restrict you is quite heavy as the deck itself is not very good.
So Toffel's suggestion for you, if you want to play this deck, is draw the right discard spell at the right time because otherwise you will be sad.
I mean, obviously then you don't have a problem, right? You just have to fix the issue.
I love the Pelaka Predation because I just love the spell lands because they give you so much flexibility. But then one card that stood out when we looked over the deck list and, you know, took some notes earlier is the Westgate Regent. It's a very clunky card, right?
5 mana for, I mean, void discards. It's almost a bit weird to the point that when they have some cards and they use it to get rid of it, you can't make them discard anything.
Yeah, you just gave them a target for your spot removal. I'm also not fully convinced there. So maybe that's a point where you can still improve on the deck. Maybe if you've got additional budget available through some means. As for the sideboard, there's another card that stood out a lot to me, which is Kitesail Freebooter, because it plays into the exact same thing, where suddenly they have access to something they can remove, and then your card just got traded 1-for-1.
I think it's just for the very hardcore control matchups or something where you don't expect it to die, and it's fine that it lays around and feels like the most important thing, and you don't mind this dying to like a 1-for-1 Wrath or whatever. So one of the things I think is quite easy to improve is replacing some of the swarms with a castle. What I do like about the deck is the interaction of Tergrid and Davriel. Tergrid, when you discard, you'll get the ability to play it, and Davriel makes discarding very cheap. So
yeah, like the setup, right? Because Tergrid is kind of expensive at 5 mana. But if you already have a Davriel lying around, you can just activate it and make them discard. Kind of cheap people's Liliana of the Veil, right? We don't have access to Liliana of the Veil on a budget.
The cool part about this is if they discard a land, you get it because like you just have it. And if they discard anything else, well, if it's big, you're very excited because they want to keep it to cast it.
Next up, we've got a submission by Moderation Gaming, and in steep contrast to their name, everyone has got a different opinion on the whole what's a budget modern deck. This one runs a steep 224 euros as well as 73 cents without shipping, that is. Moderation gaming kind of on a bigger budget here. That being said, still not in this thousands of euros that actual modern decks run these days.
Yeah, in comparison to some decks, it's budget.
It is. Toffel, you've got a bit of history with this deck.
Yeah.
It's taking turns.
Yeah, I used to play those quite competitively for some modern times, especially when Eldrazi was one of the bigger decks. Actually, which is quite interesting. I mean, those were times 2015. The deck looks almost the same, I have to say. Like, obviously we didn't play cards like Cass Adventures, but almost all the other cards were part of the deck, and it was, given some certain metagame, actually a pretty good choice. Not quite sure how that works nowadays with Force of Negation, but...
Yeah, true. With the free counterspell in the format,
that could be tough.
Seems quite tough. But in general, what this deck is aiming to do is kind of control the board, build up a hand, build up a board with cards that let you draw additional cards each turn.
Yeah.
And then play one, take an extra turn card, and then just keep following those up over and over, because you play so many, and since you do draw additional cards all the time, yeah, you can just basically take all the turns. How do you win in the end, Toffel?
This list is a bit lazy, I would say, to the point that you can actually win. Here you actually have, I don't even know why you have an Ink with Nexus. The actual win option is part of Water Whale, where you put counters on your lands. And I guess the idea is Ink Nexus is just quicker, because then it's all of a sudden a 6/6, I assume.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, true. That makes sense. It's definitely kind of a synergy there with part the Water Veil. In addition, there's also Jace the Mind Sculptor. Did you have access to that back then?
We didn't need it. It wasn't modern legal as well, but
yeah.
Also I think we didn't need it.
I see.
What I love is the good one-off of Catch You Commandeer, which is a bit sketchy to the form that some of the decks it's just really poor against, and you have some decks where it's amazing, like against Tron, for example, Commandeer.
Oh yeah, you get to take control of a card for free.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
But that as a one-off is just beautiful, isn't it? Like, they can never see it coming.
Well, if they know it's there, you can see it coming.
True, but then they're playing around the one-off.
Usually people don't expect it. Yeah, taking Planeswalkers with Commandeers is such a nice tempo boost, and that's, we would say it a fun-off, right? Like,
yeah.
It's something that makes the deck fun and spicy, and you're really excited to cast it.
Oh my goodness. Also, Commandeer, taking a Planeswalker with all the Time Walk effects you have, that's just crazy. Yeah. You just get to activate their
No, I remember we used to play 10 card drawing effects. We played 4 Holy Minds, 4 Dictate of Crewfix, and 2 Jaces. I see this list playing a little bit fewer, which I don't like. I also am not a fan of Impulse. Usually the deck was slow. I remember we played Gemstone Caverns. Expensive? I think it's not the cheapest.
But I mean, we're kind of already stretching our budget, so why not go all out and add the Gemstone Caverns as well?
Right.
So maybe a bit more permanent card draw, like Howling Mind, Dictate of Crewfix, something to, make your time walks worth it.
I understand.
And then, while we're at it, add some Gemstone Caverns, because when your deck is so slow, you really can't afford to be on the draw. That's the logic, at least.
Yep. Love the deck. One of the major improvements. I would play Minamo, because Minamo untaps legends, and Yamikokoro is a legend, which also gives you like a Holy Mind on board. Major difference, I tell you.
Alright, let's move on to the next submission. The whole deck list runs for 49 euros, so just below a 50 euro mark, which is quite cheap for actually entering the modern tournament with.
We are looking at a form of budget burn from Husky, and naturally, the thing you have to cut on when you're on budget is Jamin.
Eidolon of the Great Rebel.
I was going for lands.
Oh, okay. I mean, I was aiming very specifically at burn decks, because Eidolons, they're just have always been the most expensive part of burn decks, maybe except the mana base. But yeah, of course you also have to cut down on lands, since you can't just run fetch lands left and right.
Yeah, and shock lands and stuff. I think we can easily agree on both. Like, they're very expensive. Modern burn is surprisingly expensive. For burn being the in-mind cheap archetype where you just play burn spells.
With the, worse mana base comes the downside of not being able to easily splash white anymore. So Husky found a workaround around this in building the deck in mono red with kind of the less explored burn options.
Yes.
Mostly in their comment, they called it Miracle Burn because of the Thunderous Wrath inclusion, which is a spicy one. I remember when Avacyn Restored released, everyone was all about miracles. 1 mana, 5 damage, that's crazy. But it turns out if you have it in your opening hand or draw it at an unfortunate time, it just sucks.
Yeah.
But then there's also some other like off-meta inclusions in this burn deck.
Yeah, we have Chandra's Incinerator, which also was quite hyped. I remember when it came out. I mean,
like at the time, it wasn't, one thing that was also hindering it was Lurrus being illegal, because Lurrus required you to only play permanents with cost 2 or less when the Incinerator released. But by now, secret tip, Lurrus isn't legal anymore.
We see long forgotten cards like Flame Rift and yeah, Vexing Devil. Used to be staple, pretty forgotten now that creatures got much better.
It's also much easier to deal with like a Vexing Devil just lying around, and you can't afford that. As a budget deck, you're kind of forced into these subpower options. Also, staying in mono red makes this deck so much cheaper. Like you get so much more bang for your buck by staying in mono red. Apart from that, maybe the Monastery Swift Spear gets slightly weaker because of the inclusion of both the Incinerator and the Vexing Devil. But apart from that, I think this is a deck you can take to a modern tournament and you will win games. Like no questions asked, just because you will be aggressive enough.
Absolutely agree.
Our final entry is also our cheapest entry on today's list.
Crazy.
This deck, submitted by Tnetz the Frog,
bless you.
Only, thank you, only runs 14 euros and 40 cents in card prices, which is wild. I mean, you're getting 75 cards here.
You can get a bowl of ramen soup or a competitive modern deck.
Yeah, true. It's no other than Twiddle Storm. Now, for those who don't know Twiddle Storm, it has never been a really competitive deck. In Pioneer, it kind of has been. It centers around Lotus Field, playing it and untapping it with, for example, the card Twiddle, which lets you untap a permanent. So the idea is you have a bunch of these untappers, and then you storm off by drawing cards, by casting something like Past in Flames, where you get back all of your previous spells, and then at some point you cast a Grape Shot, and with enough storm count you can flash it back, and your opponent just goes away and you win the game.
This was before the times of playing Underworld Breach and Hidden Strings, or something that mills you for at least 3.
Yeah.
And then you could create 3 mana, and this is like the easy loop kind of to say, and this deck goes for the hard loop, like pushing through actually playing 20 spells.
It's not a deterministic loop where you just do it over and over again.
Yeah, you do have some neat tricks. I mean, how many of you can actually say they spliced ever something onto an arcane spell?
Yeah.
Any of you?
Splice onto arcane, but you do get to use psychic puppetry for exactly that matter.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool. Also, Past in Flames. I mean, as soon as you got to that point, we know from the modern real Storm combo deck that usually means game when you have it.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think you're getting more bang for your buck than with the burn deck, because I do think this kind of combo deck is very fragile towards any kind of interaction. Like you're often vulnerable to graveyard interaction, and as blue-red you also don't have a great way of dealing with it. But that being said, it is a very fun deck to play, and for the cost of like 15 euros, I can't complain really.
One of the crazy things is, I mean, this is a lot to ask from a budget deck, but it is possible. You can actually win on turn 2. I mean, since Lotus Field doesn't need you to require to sack the lands before you can use it to untap it, you can play an island and then play Lotus Field, untap it while it still wants to sacrifice stuff, but you don't care about that. Once you sacrifice, your opponent is long gone, and then you just untap and do all your spells.
It's terribly complicated because you can only use instant speed stuff because, like, for example, Past in Flames won't work. But it is technically in the realms of possibility.
Show me a budget deck that can that do better, right?
Yeah, true. Another thing to think about that is less clear cut, I would say, are cards like Discontinuity or Tail's End that allow you to mess with your own Lotus Field trigger. Discontinuity ends the turn. So if you put the Lotus Field trigger on the stack, cast Discontinuity, the turn ends, the trigger never resolves.
Free land.
Yeah, same with Tail's End. That being said, even that way, I don't think this will like win a modern tournament anytime soon, but you will get some fun out of your time.
I mean, for 15 euro.
Yeah, what can go wrong? It's 15 euro. Like, For a Magic deck, holy moly.
If you're winning, like, say, one round of the Modern Tournament, you got, like, the value of winning rounds per Euro.
Yeah.
It's insane.
All right, that's it for evaluating your Modern decks today. We had some spicy ones. We had one that was slightly over budget. But anyways, if you want to be included in this kind of video in the future, make sure to go down there and subscribe to the channel, because that way you will be notified of our community posts when we ask for these types of suggestions or submissions. While you're down there, also let us know what you think about this kind of content in the comments below. What do you want to see more of? A different format, more gameplay? I don't know. Type it out there, otherwise we can't know.
Yep, and with that, we're happy to see your suggestions and see you in the next video.